Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Season 2 premiere of Wednesday. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I was actually surprised with the opening being what it was because I thought it was going to be I thought that was we started in the middle of the story. And it is a little in media res, but not to the extent I thought it was. It's just kind of because I thought when we were around 6 weeks, I thought we build up to that. It's it's pretty quickly of she was just spending the past 6 weeks, controlling her abilities and hunting down a serial killer she's been fascinated in since she was 11 years old. What was it? The Kansas scalper? So I thought that was going to be more of a big lead up, but it's no, after getting some evidence and now having her psychic abilities better under control, she's able to lock in on the person and she makes her way to Kansas. I love the whole TSA situation where it's go ahead, take out all your weapons, and they kind of get on her about it. And then it was here's a prosthetic hand. She's pretending things won, but the real crime was, not crime, but annoying thing of, don't you see? You're not supposed to have this much, liquid or whatever. And it's it's hand cream or whatever. Sunscreen or whatever. And it's the joke being that that's all that they're pissed about. Let's ignore the weapons. Let's ignore the hands and not ask too many questions on that front. Who cares? Because we're already confiscating your weapons regardless. But we're not going to, pull you aside for second screening and yada, yada, yada. We're going to lambast you, or we're going to scrutinize you for having too much of the, liquid on you. It's yes. Hilarious. But also finding out that this the Kansas scalper is played by Haley Joel Osment, which is so interesting because I was hadn't he been in something serial killer recently? Not recently. Wasn't he in a Ted Bundy thing on Netflix, I think? I'm not the most, I don't always dive into true crime stuff, so some of that just kind of it's out of my wheelhouse. It's also interesting, too, because I'm about to say, the most recent, murder mystery thing I saw him in, funny enough, because this has a little bit of that murder mystery element to it, is Poker Face, who's also in Poker Face, most recent season of Poker Face as well, Steve Buscemi. So I was it's funny how that all works out. Great that Steve Buscemi's voice only, but either way, the scalper plans on doing what he's going to do to Wednesday, but no, they pretty much, pun intended, single-handedly rather, it's the actual phrase, I don't know why I said one-handedly, that was stupid, single-handedly, messes him up, grabs him by the balls, slams his head, thing is, thing, so, but it's still kind of man, how embarrassing it is to be, beaten and humiliated single-handedly, again, by single hand, so. And then Wednesday ended up scalping him. Well, no, they just cut off his head to humiliate him. Cut off his hair to humiliate him. And she didn't take any of the credit, but she does have something from the Kansas Sentinel, look at my great work. I caught a serial killer, especially how this has been something kind of a prize of hers for years upon years, and she didn't bother telling anyone about it. Because, it plays into the theme of the episode too, of Wednesday's never been one for anyone else's approval or applause. It's always just kind of this is a me thing, and I get satisfaction in knowing I did it. There's also a satisfaction in knowing no one will ever know I'm the one responsible for it. I don't know, it's just so interesting getting Haley Joel Osment just for that little bit, but I'm so curious to see if there's something more to that, or just nah. I think it's just supposed to be extra fun because it's Haley Joel Osment. Because he plays he's just one of those actors really comfortable playing. No, I'm perfectly fine playing bit little roles. It's okay because I thought this would be fun and that's super dope, So I just think it's kind of neat to kind of put a very well-named known actor to be associated in that role. I don't know. I think that's kind of interesting. It's almost I guess you could almost look at it as quote unquote stunt casting in a way, but that's why I'm curious, will he pop up, or is no, that's 100% a one-off and you'll never see him again. You might hear references here and there, but that's about it. obviously it's time to return to Nevermore. And I do think this is interesting too, that Morticia obviously wants to read Wednesday's novel, but not Wednesday's, like, and basically when the sun explodes is when you'll read it, so never. But she's like, soon enough, mother, soon enough. But it's like so interesting considering like that ends up being this recurring theme where like her novel was rejected. There were so many notes about this and that, but like Wednesday's refusal to change it. She doesn't want her mom to read it. But it ends up kind of being used as her kryptonite later on in the episode because she refuses to make copies of it because it's like she typed it out. And so using any kind of modern technology to like make copies of it, she refuses. So, which obviously comes to bite her in the end, but still. But also a recurring theme in this episode too is her visions taking a toll on her like never before. So the question then becomes like, well, what's that about? Like it seems like there's inklings that this type of power will eventually drive you mad. I mean, and it wouldn't be the first series that's kind of tackle that. Like you've seen that, and I've seen that in other iterations of like, yeah, like when you've opened your mind to something like that, it can fracture and break your mind to some extent. You'll eventually go crazy. It seems like there's some deep family secrets associated with that, specifically about her mom. Specifically, her mom's sister, was it Ophelia? Like there's something there, and she even says like later on, Morticia's like, I don't want. She's like, she's keeping secrets from me. I'm not gonna let that happen again. Obviously her and Wednesday made their way through some form of a nice relationship. It's still complicated, but they're working their way through it. But like the fact is that like when she doesn't like Wednesday keeping secrets because I guess her sister did, and it's like by the time Morticia probably found out about it, it was too late to save her. So because even Wednesday was like, oh, you never talk about Aunt Ophelia at all, and it's just because I think she's trying to like get Wednesday to drop her guard a little bit and like be a little more open to her. But we'll talk about that more throughout the episode. But obviously, it's not just Wednesday returning to Nevermore. It's also Pugsley's first day at Nevermore, and he's so excited. Obviously, he's got shares the electric powers like his Uncle Fester. But the problem, and there was a whole conversation about like, oh, like it skipped over Gomez. But Morticia says like being an outcast isn't about what you can do. It's it's basically like being an outcast is a state of mind. So just because you can't have some ability doesn't make you any less of an outcast. So I even love the whole bit about the eject seat. He's like, that's not going to work. Dad's got the button for that. He's like, oh, I had it rewired. So it's like, oh, I better hit this O or she's legitimately going to like eject me. And she was so disappointed. I love also just the pure chaos of like the cars crashing and then the explosion in the back. And it's just like, back, glad to be back with the Addams family being this like menace, chaos inducing family. But either way, when Wednesday arrives, she's getting the hero treatment after everything last season. And that doesn't suit Wednesday well. She doesn't like the intention. She's like, in fact, I hated it I loved it more when people avoided me and hated me and feared me. And now this, I don't know what to do with it. It's interesting considering like how we didn't really get to see how Bianca, even though Bianca is kind of Queen Bee, like I think a lot of that's kind of subsided after last season because she doesn't seem like she embraces it as much as like Wednesday does, as much as Enid did, because Enid seems like really basking in it because her having a sunny disposition that she does, once again, ironic, werewolf and all that, but I think for her, she's enjoying it a little bit more, and I wonder will that, kind of ends up being a point of contention between her and Wednesday at the end of the episode, but I'm curious to see if that will continue or not, whether it's just kind of like, well, that's kind of nipped in the bud by the end of the episode, so that's not a concern. Because that feels like it also plays into how Enid and Ajax are kind of going through their relationship situation where it's like, well, Ajax is in love with the person I was, not who I am, because she's grown more, her role in the pack, and it's like, oh, she kind of went away for like that werewolf thing for like all that for the summer, and now that she's back, she's changed, and so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Then you have Pugsley and Eugene being roommates, but they don't hit it off because Pugsley has to deal with the fact that he's going to forever be in his sister's shadow, even though she kind of literally burnt the like throne that people kind of the podium rather, or pedestal that people put her on. She kind of basically burned it down at the end of the episode. He's still always just going to be Wednesday's sister, and even he's like, oh, I only chose to be your roommate because Wednesday's a hero and kind of saved the day. So Pugsley, like, we don't really know if he's really had any friends. Probably the closest thing he's had to a friend, ironically, is his sister, no matter how much of a torturous relationship that is. It's like, it's their shtick, it's their thing, and outside of that, we don't really know if Pugsley really had any friends at all, and he's not making any in Nevermore. I mean, sucks when, like, hey, you can't even get your roommate to want to spend time with you. Like, even, it is the thing of even being an oddball, he stands out even more amongst outcasts, so... And he just wants to belong, which is I think meant to be the perfect antithesis of his sister, who just wants to be left alone. So that is interesting. He'd give anything to have her popularity, and maybe throughout this season, what Wednesday wanted to relinquish, her brother will try and grab. We'll see. We get introduced to Principal Barry. Was it Dort? Once again, played by Steve Buscemi, which is pretty dope. And it's interesting because he definitely seems he has his own schemes at play here, but he's like, because his whole thing seems to be, I'm going to make Nevermore embrace the whole outcast. Weems was all about us fitting in with the normies, but it's like, I want us to stand out as outcasts. And like, being as manipulative as he is, he's definitely up to something sinister, because he's trying to manipulate Bianca. He's like, oh, like, use your power for, like, the fundraising and stuff like that. Like, embrace being a siren and stuff like that. I know you've been a little bashful, but I'm just like, no, embrace it. Then trying to get Morticia to be at, like, the representative at, like, that gala. And then also trying to use Wednesday's, like, clout as a hero as something too. So it's like he's pulling at these threads, and it seems like by the end of the episode, he only has one definite. He'll probably have two. The definite being, like, Bianca, Wednesday kind of, like, put a kibosh on what he was trying to, like, use her for, even though we haven't really gotten to that. But Morticia, I think, will probably be sticking around more because she sees what Wednesday's going through by the end of the episode. So she's definitely going to be sticking around, which, hey, more Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia, I'm here for it. Because they are inviting them to, like, stay, because she's going to be staying in Thornhill's place. It's going to be neat to see what the proper remodeling is going to look like now that she's going to hijack that. But I think the entire family is going to stay in there, so we probably will. I don't think it's just going to be a Morticia staying there alone. Like, Gomez and Lurch might be a little more prominent in this season in that capacity. We'll see. Or it might just be they will go back home. I mean, I just wouldn't. I couldn't see Gomez wanting to be too far away from Morticia. Also, I love Gomez. Like, when he went into, like, Pugsley's room, he's like, "Oh, I remember this. I put this here." It's just, he's reliving his glory days, obviously. But I just love him leaning into Pugsley and Eugene. These will be the friends that you'll make for life. Who will be there, who will kill for you or die for you, but he's also be your alibi. And it's just like, I love Gomez so much. Him and Pugsley sharing dead mice from the mouse traps in Thornhill's place. Right off the bat, we also are dealing with an immediate murder. There was a private investigator, was named Carl, was investigating. Specifically, he was looking behind, like, into, like, some grocery store people. And I heard the term Piggly Wiggly. I was like, Jesus, I haven't been to a Piggly Wiggly in forever. Because, like, where I grew up, there's one nearby. But I'm like, hearing that, I was like, oh, God, I haven't stepped. I actually don't know if there's anyone. Is there one even near here? There's a few in the city, actually, just look. Because I've never thought to actually look. I've been living here for over a decade. And I was like, I've never bothered to look if there are any Piggly Wigglies nearby or whatever. Just because, like, in my hometown, it's like, there's one, like, so close that it's just interesting. Either way, tangents and all that aside, that just kind of, like, made me go, like, oh, I haven't heard the name Piggly Wiggly in a while. But either way, like, it seemed like he was just following them as an affair because, like, maybe they were having an affair. It seemed like it. But it seemed like there was something larger at play here, that maybe it's a piece to, like, maybe they were suspects in whatever it is he was investigating, and then he proceeded to get, like, ripped apart by once again, I don't fully know. I know some of the differences aesthetically. I don't know the differences, but I'd assume with the theme of Nevermore and everything that they're ravens and stuff like that. Specifically, it seems like there's one. I guess maybe it's kind of like the main familiar or whatever by who's responsible for all this, because it's the one that's got like that. I don't know if that's like skin was ripped away, like the red splotch on like the right side of its face. But yeah, like a whole bunch of birds kamikazing, and then there's also, hey, they were already waiting inside and he proceeded to like murder you. I've never seen it, but I also wonder, is that supposed to be kind of like an homage in some shape or form to like isn't it just The Birds, the Orson Welles movie? I feel like I tangentially know that, and I think it's been remade before too, and it's not some a thing I'm familiar with, but I'm like, I don't know if it's just meant to be kind of a little wink and a nod and homage to that, or am I just overthinking it? But obviously Wednesday came to the crime scene, drawn to it in a way, and she runs into Gilpin, who's investigating as well, because apparently Carl was a friend of his, so there's something deeper at play. And it's like, oh, like it's a danger to Outcast, which even Moon says, like, now you care about Outcast? You were so anti-Outcast. It's like, well, my son is one, so he needs to, and it's trying to make up, like, because he's drowning in it. We see him later on. You feel kind of bad for him. It's like, your son has become what he's become, but it's like, well, Thornhill made him into what he is, but it's like, well, your son always was one. It's just Thornhill just unlocked what was already there. I think it becomes that nature versus nurture conversation, I'm sure, and I'm sure he feels that, because it's like, well, your son did murder quite a few people, so, and that, especially as a cop, you kind of have to step down, and then how do you kind of come to terms with what your son is? And so, because I believe if I remember season 1's ending, like he broke out, but like there's no, like, either like he's still unaware of that, or maybe he still is locked up. I don't know. I saw Hunter Duhan's name, so he will be back this season. I figure we're not done with him yet. I mean, even though like Thornhill is like apparently super locked up, but we're not done with Tyler. There is an interesting thing about, like, Gelfman was saying, like, right, be careful, the birds, you gotta be careful of them, they're watching, and Wednesday's kind of looking at them, because she was trying to use her abilities, because she, gets messages from her stalker, but even when she uses her powers, she can only see things from their view. She can't actually see the stalker, and it's like, how are they doing that? And I'm wondering, like, is the stalker related to the bird thing, or are those two separate things? Because I think that could probably potentially be a way around that, where it's like you can't see the stalker because they're using like a familiar of sorts to kind of be their eyes and ears, and so there's no direct connection to the person behind them. But like I said, those could just be two separate things. They don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. We also meet Miss Capri, played by Billie Piper. I saw her name in the opening credits, and I didn't remember until she popped up. I was like, all right, Billie Piper's in this. And I was like, I had to think to myself, I'm like, is this the first time I'm ever hearing her do an American? I'm sure it's not the first time she's ever done it, but I think it's the first time I've ever heard her do an American accent. I haven't seen like everything Billie Piper's been in, but I'm trying to think like, in regards of like, I was like, over the few things I have seen her in. Once again, the timing's interesting with just kind of like other people being in other stuff, because I was like, I kind of got spoiled because it's my own fault because I'm not caught up on some, but I'm like, there's a certain thing that she was in fairly recently that I was like, oh, that's interesting. Once again, I wish I hadn't got spoiled on it, but once again, it's my own fault for not being caught up. But I was like, oh, that's just interesting timing. But apparently, like, she's some big time singer, and she's having this interesting conversation with Wednesday about her music, because it's like, oh, your music doesn't fulfill you, because she's like, no, like, I don't do it for, I do it like it fulfills me. It's like, well, you're not fulfilled by it. That it's like, she seems like she's tugging at something. I mean, it's not like she'd be the first teacher to try and, I mean, so many people are trying to use Wednesday, and it's like, but what are you trying to get out of her? Like, you see some potential in her that you want, because she was making some parallel about, because her novel seems to be her main fulfillment. But like, I'm curious where that storyline with Miss Capri is going to end up going. I mean, she's also feels like there's something set up there where it's just kind of like, because she's got red hair, the Thornhill of it all. I'm like, feels like there's something there that I'm like, that just seems really interesting, and I'm like, huh. Will that be something, or was that just kind of like a nothing thing? It feels too on purpose that the last teacher she got close to ended up being Thornhill, redhead, who ended up doing what she did. So I don't know. I also really like, what is it, the Clockwork Heart storyline. Also, how that was done, I was like, oh, that's so dope. I don't know if that was fully like stop motion animation, but obviously it gives the Corpse Bride and Halloween Town feel. The Clockwork Heart thing also makes me think of like the main, essentially the final boss of Sly Cooper. I'm blanking on his name, but like the bird enemy guy in Sly Cooper, because I believe that comes back in the second game as well. It's been so long, so do forgive me on my lack of Sly Cooper knowledge, but wasn't his like title having something to do with like the Clockwork Heart as well? It's interesting, but I like that. But basically, it's a genius who had a frail heart, and basically he created his own heart. It seems like he was a Da Vinci because of like the telekinesis thing he was doing. But apparently, like, he kind of got more cold. I think, it's like, oh, like, no longer have the warm beating heart, but the cold heart of steel or metal. And then he was done in by his own experiment, and then he's buried under Skull Tree, and there's a tradition to go hear the heart, and Pugsley ends up going off on his own, and inadvertently, I think, resurrects the guy with his electricity. And at first he's kind of scared, but then he smiles, so it's like, like, I guess that's going to be your angle to this episode season. Like, that's just going to be your friend, and whether you keep him a secret, you probably won't bother bonding with anyone else, because this is someone who will accept you. Kind of like, maybe it end up being kind of this Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monsters thing they'll probably have going on. Which is interesting, because you'd almost feel like Lurch kind of fulfills that role to some extent, but obviously this would be the more direct parallel, considering like you did resurrect him with electricity, power of life, so, and you seem giddy about it. So I think when people will try to get closer to Pugsley, he will probably keep this a secret, because he's like, no, this is kind of my thing, it's no one else's thing. And whether there'll be consequences of that, most likely this will come back to bite him, because he's going to keep it hush hush. And also, this guy was a bit of a mad scientist. I think that'll probably be the irony to it, that Frankenstein is Victor Frankenstein, and usually his monster. But I mean, certain iterations have like showcased the monster having intelligence, and like one example I think of is like Penny Dreadful, that he became smart and intelligent on his own. I think about like Creature Commandos most recently in the DCU. So, I mean, I'm curious where it's just kind of like having a resurrected mad genius probably will be able to easily manipulate a very lonely Pugsley. So we'll see where things kind of go on that front as well. The Stalker going as far as they did, circling over to the Wednesday side of things, leaving her novel in the pyre, and it's like, well, what are you trying to what are you trying to get out of this? Do you want to push her because you believe, like, are you trying to prepare her for something, or do you admire Wednesday? Do you hate Wednesday? Like, why are you doing, like, to do what you did? It feels like you want her to get hurt, or you just like, oh, I'm challenging you, I'm trying to make you better, I'm trying to prepare you for what's to come. Like, I see the dangers that are nearby, and I'm trying to prepare you for them and help you in my own way. Or is it just I kind of want to put you through your paces, and like, it's like a obsession turned deadly. Well, obsession can almost by nature be deadly. So I'm like, but that's probably like redundant to say, but you get what I'm saying, where it's just like that obsessive love will tend to turn deadly. So that's what I'm curious, like, if that's the approach they're taking with this Stalker. And then afterwards, once again, like I brought up earlier, Wednesday basically torched the podium that she was on, and she's like, don't follow me, leave me alone, like, don't admire me, don't put me on a pedestal, And I love that Bianca kind of smiles, because she's like, well, because she embraced the whole popular thing, and she knew Wednesday wouldn't, and I think she kind of likes that. I also like that while they were singing the theme, that guy was just going so hard at the paint, and Bianca had to stop and like stop showboating. Which I think is supposed to be the irony too, that she's not the showboatiest of them. But also, like, yeah, like Barry got rid of the nightshades. He's like, oh, we're all nightshades. I also appreciate too when he was like, yeah, I'm your principal, Barry Dort, and he stopped because he expected applause after he said his name, and then he moves on and says something else, and everyone's like, yeah. Not too many people responded well to the whole nightshade things, especially, well, the nightshades themselves. It's been such an institution and element to all this, and for you to kind of get rid of it, kind of like, oh, we're all nightshades, we're all in this together, nothing to kind of differentiate us because we have to come together as outcasts. I'm also assuming he's, what, pyrokinetic, considering doing what he did, so. And then finally, the episode ending with Wednesday having a vision of Enid's death, and obviously Enid blaming her and being like, it's your fault that I'm dead, Wednesday. It's like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to try to keep your distance from her because you, like, if I keep my distance, I will not, she won't meet the same fate? Or will it be a thing of, I need to keep you closer, which is not something she's used to doing, but she has to keep her best friend even closer, and just for the sake of, I don't know what's to come. So will she warn Enid? Will she not? It's going to be interesting to see, obviously, how Wednesday handles things, because Wednesday doesn't handle things in the most conventional means. She handles things the Wednesday Addams way. You know, for her, that's the only way. But we'll see how that all shapes up and fares out, especially like I brought up earlier with Morticia now seeing this and recognizing, like, oh my, like, you know, she's still kind of seizing at the end of the episode. So, like, Morticia's going to be like, no, I got to keep my baby, you know, close by. And will she reveal anything about her sister, the parallels in that capacity? We'll have to wait to see. But I'm excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. Little side note here at the end of the recording, I should also say, I could have put this at the beginning, but I was like, I'll just put it at the end. In case you are curious, it's just a behind the scenes thing. It's not important, but last season of the show, I labeled it as a super fantify. I think I had this debate. I don't remember if it was in a recording or outside of a recording, but the Addams family were originally characters created for a comic strip, so technically, even just comic strip wise, it still would fall under the vein of a not too comic book, so that's why I'm shifting it over. Could I retroactively go back and change all those? Yeah, but what's the point? They're still labeled as super fantavies in the recording, so I can't change that. I'm not going to go through the trouble of like downloading them and re-upload. It's not important, you know. It's not that big of a deal. Once again, it will always bother me, but like I said, that's just a me thing. So it's a behind the scene thing that's super irrelevant. But like I said, I get in my own head. I'm very anal retentive about those things. If you don't know, so just felt like throwing that at the end there as well. So. But yes, I've run my mouth long enough. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.